Okay, we've already talked a little bit about the law and what it's all about. You've got statutes over here and case law over here, and when you're studying any area of law, that's what you need to do. Have a look at those two things. Those are the sources of law. The sources in this case are the Children Act 1989, which pretty much includes everything we need to know, and the case law from mostly the Courts of Appeal, a few High Court cases as well, and some county court cases, but generally county court cases tend not to be publicised, and that's a big problem that we need to address. And you can see some of our comments on our website about that. Under the heading of transparency, under the reforms that we propose and adopt, because this has all been proposed a million years ago. So yeah, let's have a look then just briefly at what all of that law says. We can boil it down pretty simply. So first of all, we have to look at the child's wishes and feelings. How do we know that? Well, the Act tells us that that's what we have to look at. But of course you're thinking, well, my child's been alienated, so everything that the child is saying, it doesn't like me, it rejects me, the child thinks I'm a monster or something like that. That's all been put in that child's brain by the alienating parent. So, Kafkas, please take note. We just have to scrape the surface a little bit and try and look at what the child really means. We know from various experts that children just don't reject parents without help. So we have to look at what the child really means. In other words, we have to look at the child's ascertainable wishes. And that, as I say, just means kind of just looking a little bit deeper, please. And we know that ascertainable wishes is what we ought to be looking at, because it tells us in the Act in words of 5 syllables. Ascertainable. So yeah, this point was very clearly and robustly made by Mrs. Justice Parker in a case called Re H. And in that case, there were alienated children, and Mrs. Justice Parker says, no, they stay with Dad. And Mum didn't like that, so she appealed to the Court of Appeal, and the Court of Appeal said, no, Mrs. Justice Parker was right. And this is something one does tend to find with Mrs. Justice Parker, she's right. So yeah, and what she said was, yeah, don't just look at what the child says, look at what the child means. So Mrs. Justice Parker says it, and the Children Act says it, so it must be right. So that's not all, though. That's not all. That's not all we have to look at. We have to also look at Section 1 of the Children Act, which talks about something called the paramountcy principle. That is that although we're interested in the child's wishes and feelings, whether expressed, merely expressed, or ascertainable, we also have to look at what is in the child's best interests. And this consideration is the paramount consideration. So, a child might say, well, I don't want to see my other parent, but what the law says, not necessarily what the judges say, but what the law says is, well, we appreciate what you say, but nevertheless, it's in your best interest to have both parents in your life. And that's what the cases say, and again, that's what the Act says. We have to assume, says the Act, that it's a good thing to have both parents in your life. So yeah, child's best interests trump everything else. So the next thing we have to think about is, okay, let's say for argument's sake you're trying to get some contact and your child's going, I hate you, you're a monster. And contact is difficult because, it's made difficult by the alienating parent. And so, contact is going to be problematical. Now, of course, this is not in reality because the child hates you or fears you or anything like that. The child doesn't want to see you because the child knows if it does see you or has a good time when it does see you, there will be hell to pay in due course from the alienating parent. That's the point. That's what PA is all about. So contact is going to cause some short-term problems for the child. But nevertheless, and again, all the cases say this, the longer term best interest of the child trump any short-term problems that there might be. So it's in the child's best interest to have contact with both parents, and if that causes the child problems in the short term, well, that's unfortunate, but the longer term best interests of the child prevail. So that's how it works. Long-term best interests trump short-term best interests. All best interests trump wishes and feelings, and in the wishes and feelings department, ascertainable wishes trump expressed wishes and feelings. That's kind of it. That's the law. What we've got to do then, of course, is to get judges to follow the law, which sounds a bit weird, doesn't it, really? You'd have thought that judges follow the law because that's what judges do, right? But judges don't. Not in the county court and the magistrates court. If you look at all the courts of appeal cases, quite a lot of them go the way of the alienated parent, and that sounds pretty groovy, but it's not quite as good as it sounds. And the reason it's not as good as it sounds is that most of our cases, a vast majority of our cases, I don't know what the numbers are, but a very big majority, are going to be heard in and disposed with by the lower courts. So they're weeded out a long time before they get to the superior courts, and those cases that are weeded out like that in a fantastically unjust kind of way are not reported. And lower court judges can make their decisions knowing, unlike high court judges and court of appeal judges, that their decisions are not going to be appearing the next day on the front page of the Daily Mail. So they can do what they like. There's not really a great deal of accountability. Some county court decisions are reported, and you'll see some of these county court decisions have started to be a bit more robust. We can look at judges like Recorder Kean and Judge Loughran, and Her Honour Judge Gordon Saker in Re B last year, 2017. And so the judgments, they're starting to be reported a bit more, and they're starting to get a bit more robust. And frankly, it's hard to imagine that there's not some kind of correlation between those two things. The more cases are reported, the more just they tend to be. Bit of a weird one, that. So yeah, that's the law. Thanks for watching.